Well, hey there, everyone, and welcome to the No Grow Go podcast. I'm Matt Jordan. I'm the senior pastor here. And today we have a very, very special guest. I had the chance to meet Jason just recently at a gathering at Kaufman's Gun Shop. There was a gathering that he put together along with Kaufman's to talk about a program that he has started and that he is really, really passionate about, and something that fits well with the mission of the church of caring for those around us, and something that I think would be really great information for you all, especially those of you that watch and listen that are active duty military or that are retirees, work on Rucker, and work with those in our community that could use an extra shoulder to help support them in times of need. And so we've got Mr. Jason Smith with us. Jason, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, and just catch us in on who Jason is.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Jason Smith, born in Montgomery, Alabama. I did 20 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. Retired in 2015, so it was about 10 years ago since I retired. Love the outdoors, love to hunt, fish, big bow hunter, anything outdoors I can do. That's what I like to do. I've got a wife, almost 28 years. We've been together. We got two great kids. I got a son that's out. He's in the NOAA Corps. He actually drives one of the boats for NOAA. He's up in Ketchikan, Alaska. And then my daughter, she does HR work in Montgomery, and they just had, we just got blessed with our first grandbaby, which awesome. I'd rather be a grandfather all the time. Grandbabies are better. So I got a little granddaughter that's 18 months. Her name's Cass. So we moved back down here to Alabama, and I settled back in to do that whole transition from the military to the civilian world, which is a little awkward. Finally found my place down here, and so that's me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I know that you had mentioned when I met you the first time that you used to work at Walter Craig's.
I did.
And let me just tell you, I've bought 2 Glocks from them in the past year and a half. And best store, best prices.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, just the best.
Yeah, great store, great people. Teddy runs that place now. Lynn and Bohel used to run it. They got a great crew up there now. It's awesome. Very fortunate to get to work there. My best friend was the manager of the store at the time, and I got to work there for about 2 years. And, so yeah, it was a good time. Definitely.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm a chaplain with Coffee County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
And they buy a lot of things from Walter Craig, do a lot of business with them. And anytime I've ever asked, hey, where do I need to go to get whatever? I'm a reserve deputy. It's kind of a funny story. I had volunteered as a reserve to go and pick up ballots during the last presidential election. And I didn't realize what all was involved in that. And I said, well, shoot, I can drive the patrol car, so I'll just go and pick it up and bring it up to the sheriff's office, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, the day of, they called me and they said, hey, you can't go pick up ballots. And I said, well, why not? And they said, well, you're not certified with a firearm, and you got to be certified with a firearm to be able to go. And I said, well, by George, I'll be the only chaplain to be certified with a firearm because you can't tell me I can't pick up ballots.
Right.
And they said, well, you need, either a Glock 17 or a Glock 19.
Right.
And so I went to Walter Craig's. I got my Glock 19 and got scheduled to get certified. And now the joke around the church is I protect the flock with a Glock.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome.
But I grew up in Arab, Alabama, and I grew up hunting and fishing and things like that. And so there's still a side of me that's stubborn and just can't tell me what I can't do.
That's
and
right.
Want to try and improve myself. So
that's right.
The program that you have that we're here to talk about is it's called S.A.F.E.R together.
Right.
And I think I might could explain it a little bit, but I'd probably mess it up. Tell us about this program. Tell us what this is and why you think it's so important.
Sure. I probably should start first, give you a little background on how this program got started, where it's coming from. So let me back up a little bit to a little bit more of my story, so kind of get the real understanding. So when I retired out of the Marine Corps, about 2 years after I retired, I finally made a decision. I had to quit drinking. I'd become an alcoholic. I'd just, transitioning out of the military, out of the Marine Corps was horrible. And I didn't realize that thing had taken over my life. And during that time frame, I lost about 7 Marines to suicide in the course of about 8 years, from about 2009 to about 2015, right? And so that became, the suicide issue in the military is 22 a day, 44 a day, whatever number you want to read. It's terrible. And then it also affects our law enforcement, first responders, EMS guys and gals as well. So I just got to a point where, I was kind of at that crossroad in my life where I was going down that path. And, the stigma around going to get help is one thing that we all fear. We don't want to talk about our problems. We don't want to admit we got a problem. We're worried about, one of my biggest fears in the Marine Corps why I never went and got help was because I was worried about what would happen. Would I be able to deploy my guys? Would I be able to, keep my Second Amendment right? Would I lose my job, promotion, like all these things, which is what kept me from doing anything while I was in. And just finally got to a point where it was just out of control, right? And so before, losing everything, I finally, talked to another veteran that was a Marine that had been through that path. And he talked with me. We talked for a little bit. It made sense. And you know what? And I finally just said, I'm going to get some help. And went up to Bradford Health Services up in War, Alabama, with a treatment program for about 30 days. Got out and started calling some of my buddies up, let them know I've been offline for 30 days, which, by the way, is a great thing. If you put your phone down for 30 days. Yeah. Email, it's awesome. But, I was concerned about what they were going to think about, the mass sergeant that, couldn't handle his liquor, or I didn't know, I don't have these bad thoughts. We all have these negative thoughts sometimes. And started calling some of my buddies and letting them know, hey, man, I've been offline. This is why. This is what's been going on. A lot of them were like, man, why didn't you reach out to me earlier? I'm proud of you. And then a lot of them, too, were also like, man, I'm struggling with some of that, too. And I have been for a while. And I think that's the point in my life where it was kind of like, okay, kind of recharge my purpose. Because when you get out of the military, one thing, and this is the most important thing, is finding some kind of meaning in life, some type of purpose, and going out there and getting it done. Because you've had that identity in the military for so long, or even a first responder when you get out. You've had that identity for so long. And, I think I lost it after the 2 years of being out. And so I left my job that I was working at then, and I went to Walter Craig with my best friend. Awesome. And worked behind the gun counter after I got sober. I went back to college, got a degree, got a master's program completed. Did some more work in the HR field. I don't know how I wound up in HR. I'm not an HR guy, but there was a training and development position, so I got to teach class, and I enjoyed teaching people. And so I got to go back and do that again. And the people that I worked with before I went into treatment were great. They were, I thought too, going to my employer, I was going to get fired right away, and it was like, no, they were all wrapped their arms around me and loved on me a little bit, made me feel better about my decision, and they supported me even afterwards, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's, and I'm leading up to this whole S.A.F.E.R thing, but after getting sober, I learned about a program called peer support, and I started looking into that, like how could I help more veterans, more military members. And at the time I was working with Black Rifle Coffee Company. I was their HR manager up in Manchester, Tennessee. Greatest HR job because it's not like corporate America.
Well, let me just tell you, I had a pot of Black Rifle this morning.
There you go. Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
I had the dark chocolate this morning. Matter of fact, Black Rifle. Yeah. I always give them a shameless plug. But working up there, your population, a lot of the employees were either veterans or dependent of veterans, and we're all struggling, right? We're all struggling. No man, we don't have the monopoly on mental health as veterans. We all are struggling with something, right? And that's when the peer support stuff started happening. I got into a training program down here, in Tennessee, and got certified. And then lo and behold, somebody from Bradford Health Services, where I got sober, happened to walk in my office one day. And we got to sit down talking. He was telling me about his program and all this, what they do at Bradford. And I'm just like trying not to say, yeah, I'm a member of that, the alumni. Right. And then I finally did. I said, look, this is what I've been doing. And the next thing I know, I get a call from Lonnie Layton, who at the time was Director of Business Development for Bradford, and he's actually on our peer support team for S.A.F.E.R Together. And next thing I know, I'm working with veterans, getting them in treatment, working for Bradford. And that kind of started the whole process, and got to do that. And then after about 2 years, I took a new job with the National Guard here in Alabama as a state resiliency and suicide prevention director. 2 days into my job, we had a suicide. And so this is where the story really starts for S.A.F.E.R. And it was our first meeting we had. It was my second day on the job. And at this point, I've already lost a couple other buddies to suicide. Now, the 7 I talked about, we're up to 8, not including the ones who we've lost to overdose from prescription medication, plus alcohol, plus illegal drugs, all that good stuff, right? So this one happens, and Brigadier General Jeffrey Smith I'll never forget this. He looked at me, he said, Jason, what do we do about the suicide problem? And I'm like, we're all trying to figure this out too, because the 22 push-ups a day, the flyers, like the run, I don't know. What's helping? I don't know. This isn't helping though. Numbers aren't going down. So I called a good buddy of mine, Dr. Raul Amin, who me and him served in the Marine Corps together. I was his platoon sergeant. He was a Lance Corporal. Real smart guy. He's from Pakistan. Read, writes Pashtun. If you know about Pashtun, that's what the Afghanis read, write.
That's a huge asset downrange.
Yeah, he was at downrange. As a matter of fact, when September 11th happened, they actually yanked him out of the platoon. He grew his beard out, and he was in Kabul like that. So, but he got a scholarship from the Army to go be a doctor. Real smart guy, and ended up being the director of psychiatry at Walter Reed. And so I called him. I said, Ro, and I took Ro deer hunting for the first time. That's how close. We're very close. And I said, what do we do, man? Like, this is the problem I'm having. We're all having this issue. He's like, Jason, he told me the story about the Golden Gate Bridge like years ago. That was the number one destination for suicide was in San Francisco. That area was the Golden Gate Bridge.
Sure.
So to mitigate that, one thing they did with the risk factor was to put a net under it, which dropped lower the numbers, whatever. He said, you don't have a Golden Gate Bridge. He said, but your main Golden Gate Bridge is firearms. And when you look at the numbers, and to be specific about Alabama in 2022, 86% of our suicides were by a firearm. Bottom line, like you can't deny that. And I said, that's going to be very challenging because this is a Second Amendment red state. Like, we're not going to hear anything about gun control. Like, I'm sorry. And I was very much, like, this is going to be tough. So this is where it spawned from that event in January of 2024. A good friend of mine that works at the VA, Kelly Arthur, she's a co-chair on S.A.F.E.R together. I called her and I said, we need to work on something. And we started talking about this lethal means safety project as it was one of the top things that the VA wanted to work on at the time. But so we've got to do it a different way down here where we're protecting the Second Amendment right, number one. We're protecting the veteran, because a lot of us will forego our mental health care in a heartbeat for our Second Amendment right.
Yeah.
I know I did it myself, right? So we started working some details out, and it just so happens, and obviously you believe in a higher power, you're a pastor here, but I just happened to be going to Wisconsin that same week to do a resiliency MRT class. It's the Master Resiliency Training course from the Army at Fort McCoy. And we found out in Wisconsin they actually have a lethal means safety project going on up there, and they have been doing it for like 4 years. So when I went up there, I made it a point to go visit two of the gun stores. One of the first ones that started, and then another one just to talk with the guys behind the counter. Like, has this been working? Is this a thing? Like, tell me more about this. And we met with a team that actually came up with a program in Wisconsin. And when they told us the numbers, they said, well, they had 50 stores in their program at the time. And I said, well, how many guns, honestly, are you averaging? He said, we average about maybe 1 to 4 a year, And you think about that as not a large number, but he said per store. And when he said per store, I was like, wait a minute, 200 people voluntarily walked in here and took their weapons and put them away for a little bit, and we got some help. Like, that's a thing. He's like, yeah.
Wow.
And, immediately called Kelly. We formed a coalition immediately after that. We said, well, how do we do it? And I went to Walter Craig at the time. Bo Hale was running the store. And I talked with Bo and talked with some other people that close to that, arena, and started talking to some other gun stores. Well, what do you think about doing something like this? And like, well, they were all on board. Like, nobody was like against it. They were like, well, what protects us liability wise?
Sure.
And that to me that's the number one hurdle we have to figure out, because if I can't protect the store, I'm not going to put my name on this, and I'm not going to do this either. So I get it. So that's what's prompted some research, and we actually found out Louisiana had a bill that they had drafted up to protect like a hold harmless agreement, a Good Samaritan Act, for when the weapon is returned to that person, you can't hold them liable no matter what, right? Unless they do something that's not due diligence. Like somebody comes in your store and you smell of alcohol, I'm not passing a gun to you anyway, regardless if you're using the Safer Together program or not. Like, if you smell like you've been using, or you make a statement that you're going to do something to somebody or yourself, I'm not handing you a gun regardless, right? But if due diligence is used and you do the right thing and they're ready to take their weapons back, give them back, whatever. So we got the bill, we drafted it. The cool thing about the bill, one thing that we changed, we made it for everybody, not just veterans, military, and first responders. That's what the program that we do, S.A.F.E.R, is geared towards that community. We're specifically focused on military, veterans, and first responders. But the way the bill is written, we wrote it for everybody. So, your farmer down the road could use it. Your plumber down the road could use it. Blue collar worker, white, it doesn't matter. Could use that program. And then we got a name for the bill, right? Because this was the most important piece of the project, and it was called the Houston Hunter Act. And so, if you've ever seen Talladega Nights, that movie with Ricky Bobby and all that, yeah. So the oldest son is Houston Tumlin. Houston Tumlin was the child actor in the movie. He was the bad kid, like cussing out the granddad, you know, saying all the bad words, right? He did one movie his whole career, and then he joined the Army. He was in the 101st for like 5 years, picked up sergeant. Unfortunately, about 5.5 years ago, we lost him, and he was struggling with some issues. And when he got back home, the transition piece, some brain injuries that he had, CTEs that they found out about later, definitely contributed to that. And so, you know, the bill itself didn't have, we had to put a name and a face on it. Like, you have to give it a story. And this was one of the Alabamians that we put on the bill. The second Alabamian was Hunter Whitley. And Hunter Whitley was in the Marine Corps. He was at Kabul during the withdrawal from Afghanistan. He was also a student at the University of Alabama, and was struggling with a lot of things as well. And unfortunately, 3.5 years ago, we lost him. And we spoke to both the families, the moms, and said, look, we'd like to use your son's first name because Houston and Hunter just sound good together. And we actually had met, the crazy thing about that, to back up, with the Iron Ruck. I don't know if you've heard of the Iron Ruck.
I haven't heard of that.
So every year, and I think for the last 8 years, the University of Alabama and the University of Auburn, their veteran student organizations get together and they march 151 miles for veteran suicide awareness. And it was 3 years ago where we were at the University of Alabama. They step off from the visiting team and they arrive and deliver the game ball in the home team stadium.
Okay.
So this year we started in Alabama and we ended up, down in Auburn, whatever, for the game. So they marched that game ball and all that, 151 miles. Well, 3 years ago was the first time Shannon and Michelle had met each other. And then Kelly and I were at that same one too. So we all kind of met, and this was like a year before this project even got started. So something was in the works, right?
Yeah.
And so when we told them about that, both the families were like, yes, let's do this. And we got the bill named the Houston Hunter Act. And I'm going to tell you too, the support that we had going into this thing, we went into session last year, was unbelievable. I can name all the organizations: the American Legion, the VFW, Alabama Department of Veteran Affairs, Sheriff's Association, the schools. I mean, God, I know I'm leaving a bunch. The Fire College, Alabama Law Enforcement, peer support folks. I mean, we just had a lot of support for this bill and this project. And I don't know anything about civics. Like, I didn't do real well in high school. That's why I went to Marine Corps, right? So I was totally unaware of how a bill gets passed. And, I kind of knew, but I never really looked into it. And then being a part of the process and seeing it, like, oh, my goodness. And so we got the bill into session, and we had actually three great guys that helped us out. Senator Keith Kelly carried it on the Senate House, the Senate Bill 40, which is the one that got passed. And then Russell Bedsole and Keith Hendricks helped out on the House side. And you had a Republican and Democrat working together, on the House. And then you had Keith Kelly, who had pretty much everybody co-sponsoring on board, helping us out.
Awesome.
Including the National Guard, too. I need to step back because they were behind this 100% as well. They got on board right away from the TAG, the Adjutant General down, even Colonel Wheeler, our resiliency director, all of them, they were very supportive of what we were doing. And so when we got it up for the vote, it was pretty impressive to me. The process kind of drove me nuts because I didn't know what a filibuster was. So I actually watched when I was pulling my beard out, watching this thing go down. When we finally got it through the House and the Senate, they made that final vote to see 99% of the folks vote yes, both Democrat and Republican, to see them to come together on something. I thought that was pretty cool. And to watch Hendricks and Bedsole get up there and both together in the House and the Senate floor share their stories as first responders themselves. Say, man, this could have saved some of my guys' lives, if we'd have had something like that. It was very, very moving. And to have the families there, do all that. So the bill, the passage of the Houston Hunter Act was kind of the cornerstone of it. And then S.A.F.E.R, we have to have an acronym for everything in the military, right? Right. It was just, and we all voted on it as a coalition. We had about 100 people in our coalition. And it was actually a doctor from the Border Patrol that came up with this name and threw it out there. Thank God, because it was some of the other ones were like, no, we can't call it that, But she came up with that. It was storing ammunition, firearms to enhance resiliency. It sounded really like everybody voted yes. That's what we went with, right? But the key to the program, really, and the key to the process of the safer together program is if you have a gun store, an FFL, Federal Firearms Licensee, that is willing to provide a little bit of square footage to provide us an opportunity to come in and put 1 to 4 safes. These are 14 gun safes, so they'll hold 14 guns without scopes or 7 guns with scopes and some handguns up top. If they have room, we'll buy the safes. We'll have the safes delivered. They can install them wherever they feel comfortable having them at. And then myself and my co-chair, Kelly Arthur, will go in and train the staff on how to do the process, which is very important here because how you store a weapon in a gun store really matters, right?
Yeah, sure.
So we're using ATF and DOJ guidance on safe storage, on storage processes in the FFLs. And the way we're doing it is the safe sits in the gun store. The veteran, say I'm the veteran with the gun, a firearm, and I want to store my weapon. And I'll get more into why they want to store the weapon. That safe is there. I put that gun in the safe. I shut the safe and give it a code because they all got digital codes, and I'm the only one with the code. Then nobody else in that store has access, so it doesn't have to go in the acquisition disposition log, which is an ATF requirement. No 4473 is required, which is your background check. It's basically them storing their weapon for whatever perceived amount of time they need, right?
Right.
And so let me back up a little bit when we talk about the process with SAFER. It's to give them a place to voluntarily, confidentially, and temporarily secure their weapons while they connect with a peer support specialist, because the peer support specialist team is the center of gravity of this program. Them dropping the weapon off is great. The next step is connecting them with someone who's been in that fighting hole before. They've struggled with the drugs and the alcohol. They struggled with whatever it might be, right? And our team is developed. We've got a team of civilians, first responders, military, because if we have a civilian, I can connect them with a civilian peer. If I have a first responder or law enforcement agents, I've got law enforcement guys or EMS guys that I can connect them with. If they're veterans, there's 4 of us on the team that are veterans that can connect with them and get them to that next level of care.
Yeah, and before you go, further on that peer support, this is on y'all's website, and I'm a pastor, so I love stories.
Yeah.
I love things that can give a symbol and connect, and I think this is something that really it hits home with me as a pastor, because I deal with a lot of people and have the opportunity to counsel a lot of folks in crisis and find resources to get them to other places. And we have a program here called Celebrate Recovery. And the tagline is everybody's got hurts, habits, and hangups. Yep. And but I think that there's something to it when you think about how to get someone help and support in the immediate, and especially something that this, especially what you do down at Florida Springs. There's a spot for counselors and psychologists who take a clinical approach to things and that kind of stuff, but there's few things more powerful than having a peer who can understand what you've been through. And I know when we met at the networking group, you said y'all can read that. I'm not reading that, but I'm going to read it for everybody here. It's entitled "A Soldier with PTSD Fell into a Hole." A senior NCO went by, and the soldier with PTSD called out for help. The senior NCO yelled at him and told him to suck it up, dig deep, and drive on. Then threw him a shovel. But the soldier with PTSD could not suck it up and drive on, so he dug the hole deeper. A senior officer went by, and the soldier with PTSD called out for help. The senior officer told him to use the tools your senior NCO is giving you, then threw him a bucket. But the soldier with PTSD was using the tools his senior NCO gave him, so he dug the hole deeper and filled the bucket. A psychiatrist walked by. The soldier with PTSD said, "Help, I can't get out." The psychiatrist gave him some drugs and said, "Take this, it will relieve the pain." The soldier with PTSD said, "Thanks," but when the pills ran out, he was still in the hole. A well-known psychologist rode by and heard the soldier with PTSD cries for help. He stopped and asked, "How did you get there? Were you born there? Did your parents put you there? Tell me about yourself. It will alleviate your sense of loneliness." So the soldier with PTSD talked with him for an hour. Then the psychologist had to leave, but he said he'd be back next week. The soldier with PTSD thanked him, but he was still in the hole. A preacher came by. The soldier with PTSD called for help. The preacher gave him a Bible and said, "I'll say a prayer for you. He got down on his knees and prayed for the soldier with PTSD. Then he left. The soldier with PTSD was very grateful. He read the Bible, but he was still stuck in the hole. A recovering soldier with PTSD happened to be passing by. The soldier with PTSD cried out, "Hey, help me. I'm stuck in this hole." Right away, the recovering soldier with PTSD jumped down in the hole with him. The soldier with PTSD said, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck here." But the recovering soldier with PTSD said, "Calm down. It's okay. I've been here before. I know how to get out."
Yep.
How does that fit into the role of peer support and the reason of its importance?
Yeah, 100%. That poem right there speaks volumes to, I know from my perspective, being that guy in the hole. It wasn't a white coat therapist at the VA. It wasn't a chaplain. It wasn't anybody like that helped me. It was another Marine who we chewed on the same dirt, and a close friend that just happened to say something that made sense to me, and that right there, I think, is what, gives us the power, enables us to go make that decision. Like, I got to go get this taken care of. And, I'll give you an example. Just last night, soldier from Fort Benning, we talked for an hour. We didn't know each other from Adam. And he was sharing, he was put in contact with me by another soldier. And as we talked, and I listened to his story, the things he was telling me about his struggles with alcohol, like when his wife would ask him, "How many have you had?" "I've only had 2. Knowing good and well, he's probably had like 7 or 8, which I was like, "Yep, the same number I had,"
Yeah.
That he was just trying to sleep, just trying to get through the night with the alcohol. Yep, same thing I told myself. And I didn't tell him that, I'm just listening, but I could just hear my story and his. And then when I shared my story and we had those similarities, he's like, "Okay, that's how you got out of the hole." I'm like, "Yeah," and I just think the peer-to-peer thing, I think we've learned over time, we see the positive effect of that. I've got a veteran therapist down at Florida Springs that he's not just a white coat, therapist. He was also in the Army. He was also going through a lot of other stuff, and he's been in that fighting hole as well. I have a VA care coordinator, Purple Heart guy, served in the Army, fell in that hole, and got out, right? And when those two guys are talking with other veterans that are in that hole, it's like it just clicks. Like last night, it finally clicked for him, where his family member told me, "I don't think he's going to do anything." And I said, "No, I think he sees the light. I think he's ready."
Yeah.
But so I think the peer thing is so important. And when you're in that moment of vulnerability, especially with this program, like if you have the courage to walk in and say, "Man, I'm having suicide ideations. I'm having issues with my finances and my family and everything above the sun. And I'm angry at everything and I can't sleep and I've got chronic pain and I've got all these things." And you finally say, "You know what? I just need to put some time and space between me and that firearm while I go get some help," because we know suicide is a rash thing. It happens and, the cortisol shoots through the body. The heart rate goes up. We're not thinking straight and we make a decision we can't overturn 99.9% of the time with a firearm. So to have the courage to do that and be connected to somebody who's been in that same situation, who goes, "You know what, I got you, brother. That's it." Like that right there, I got you back, and getting them to the next level of care, whether that's going to one of our many community partners. I don't care where they go to treatment. I don't care if they come to Florida Springs, they go to Veteran Recovery, they go to Bradford Health Services, they go to Will. I don't care. Or they go to the VA and get treatment. Like that's like get them to where they need to be. Everybody's that you got to meet them where they're at and get them to that next level of care. We find out that like over half of our veterans have never even been to the VA.
Yeah.
And 54%, the numbers always shift, but that number sticks in my head. 54% of the ones that committed suicide never went to the VA, never received any veteran services whatsoever. And then when you look at that perspective, and then also you got to think, this is why we include the first responders and the EMS, and the active duty military, because their career status is very important, what they're doing, and they don't want to talk about this stuff either. But they're seeing stuff on the day, and you're a chaplain to them.
Yeah,
they see all this stuff every day out here, and that's why the peer program, I think, in Alabama law enforcement and the fire college is so important too. Because when you got a guy going his first call and he sees something in a car accident, for God's sakes, I mean, he's got somebody to connect with. They've got something in place, and I think that's a great program. So we know the peer thing works. We know it's very very effective. And that's what we're trying to do with S.A.F.E.R is just be that point of contact, put some time and space between the weapon, and get them to the next level of care. And you got some veterans, and we have a homeless veteran issue in this country.
Sure.
And I spoke to two veterans at a show. We were at a homeless veteran thing that the VA had thrown on in Montgomery, Garrett Coliseum. And this one guy was like, "Man, I wish this had been around. I've been homeless for the last 9 months. I was living out of my vehicle." And he told me a story about this 30-30 his dad had given him, and that while he was living out of his vehicle, he had to go somewhere. He left his vehicle. Somebody broke into his vehicle. We had all his stuff. All of his belongings were in that vehicle. And I know what a 30-30 given to you by your granddad or your dad. I know what a gun means to somebody like that. It's not.
I've got. If it's the same lever action 30-30, I've got one sitting in my closet.
Oh yeah.
That I deer hunt with that belonged to my grandfather and my dad, and he even bought it back from somebody when it had gotten sold. And
oh man,
killed my first deer with it.
Yeah,
those things mean a lot.
They mean something. And we could have put those guns in stores. And he wasn't having at the time. He said I wasn't having suicide ideations. He said, I just didn't need my weapons in my vehicle. Fear of getting it stolen. I'm like, that's a perfect example of a high risk transitional, event where you could utilize this program for whatever period of time. So the peer thing is center of gravity. Like without it, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I tell you, I'm a member of Leaps, which is how we got connected, and that peer support is so significant with Leaps specifically that I and as a chaplain. Anytime I go to training at our department or anytime I go to training with Leaps, I always volunteer to be the guinea pig.
Yeah.
I'm the least expected person. And it was so funny. One training we had was tactical first aid. So, if you get shot or whatever, what do you do? And I'd never put on a tourniquet in my life. I mean, I've been first aid certified and things. We're sitting in there, and Andy Lohr, our deputy director of the EMA, he was doing the training. He said, "Who wants to volunteer?" And I said, "Well, I'll do it." And it was just a standard SWAT tee. And he said, "Go ahead and put this on and crank it on." And he said, "You have so much time before you pass out."
Right.
Oh my word! Listen, I got up there and I embarrassed myself. And we had another deputy who had been in the military for some time and was a medic and all these things. He got up there, he beat my time by like almost a minute. I mean, I definitely would have died. And just to see the differences of people's experience and impact, even in training, is so impactful. And I bring that up because in peer support, I always tell them, hey, call me. I've got things like this are, in my view, part of ministry. And I can easily leave my desk and go and be with somebody in a time of need. And they said, "Well, Chaplain, we appreciate that. But you're not certified law enforcement.
Right.
You've never rode in the back of an ambulance unless you're on the bed. You've never done those things." He said, "So if we call you, that means either everybody else is busy and tied up, or it's really bad."
Yeah.
And he said, you don't know what it's like to draw a gun on somebody and have to pull the trigger or not. You don't know what it's like to handcuff somebody and then turn around and they try to harm you. And he said, that's why we try to pair peer to peer.
Yeah.
Because they get it. They get it. You've been through things, you've seen things, but that's not your daily job.
Right.
And I think that's so impactful with connecting the right peer to the right peer. Mm-hmm. Because you know what it's like. As you said, you've chewed the same dirt. Mm-hmm. And it's evident to me just in my ministry and the people that I interact with and meet and connecting with them and those sorts of things, of being able to see their similarities with what they've encountered and to share about those things and I think that's so impactful. And I'm so appreciative personally that that's a part of the Safer Together program, that it's not just, hey, come store it here and best of luck to you.
Right.
We're going to get you connected.
Right. 100%.
So when a veteran or first responder, whoever comes in, they take their guns and they decide to lock them up, or even, I think what you mentioned the other day, even if they're hesitant about locking them up, y'all still give them information about peer support. So how does that work? You go in, you submit your weapons, and then what happens after that?
Sure, they walk in. So in any FFL, any gun shop, there's always transactions going on. So it's not going to stand out that somebody's coming to use a program or anything. And what we tell the stores too, we want them to do the least amount of lifting. Very low requirement. I don't want y'all to be therapists or counselors or anything. Just say, I got you back. Bring them to wherever you got the safes. They do a hold harmless agreement, one pager. Just we got to have some information, name, know who's in there. It's not an ATF requirement or anything. But when they open that safe, there is a folder in there, and in that folder is a ton of resources, local resources that they can reach out to if they choose not to do the peer support thing, because everything's voluntary. You've got to use, you know what I mean? So you got to everything's got to be voluntary. So we asked the question on that one page, would you like to be contacted by a peer support specialist? The hope is they say yes, and then immediately they contact me, and then we filter it out to whoever the next peer is, or if they stay with me or whatever, it doesn't matter. Or if they say, you know what, not at this time, but at least they're leaving with the local VA in their area. They're leaving with 220, that number they can call, local, folks that they can reach out to, right? And so that's how that works. And then they can come back. As far as getting the weapon, we put on that one pager, how long do you expect? Just so we kind of get an idea of maybe a day, maybe 3 days to cool off, maybe 6 months, who knows? We'll go whatever, as long as they're keeping communication with the peer and the store, the weapons aren't going anywhere because they're the only ones with the combo.
Right.
So that's how that works if they don't want the peer support.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the soldier the other day from Fort Benning from last night. Is there a success story that you can tell about people that have used the Safer Together program? Sure.
I've got 3 that I actually could tell. So until the first one, we actually first stored weapons. We had a son and a daughter-in-law go on the website, and this was for their dad. Dad wasn't in the military or anything. He was a civilian. No big deal, because it's for everybody, right? And they went online and went to Safer Together, al.org, which is our website, went on there, because they Googled in gun storage, and we popped up.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So they called Redland Rifles. JD is a store owner up there. He's also a Marine. You got a couple other veterans that work in that gun shop, and that was one of our first gun shops to go online. They called him and went, hey, it's my dad. He's having suicide ideations, has had before. And the thing about this program that we want it to be, the individual needs to be the one to come in and store the weapons, right? That's the right thing to do. You can't have your girlfriend bring your, because then you're going to run into all kind of deer season, man. Where's all my deer hunting rifle? You know what I mean? You run into issues with that, right? But we were able to get on the phone with the dad. Dad's like, yeah, this happened before. I really don't need these things around here. And they ended up bringing everything up to the gun shop, meeting JD. Of course, he had scopes on everything, had 14 weapons. So we loaded up 2 safes, filled out the form real quick. They already had support lined up, so he didn't need peer support. They already had made some contacts. They had everything lined up. They just needed to store the weapons, and they did for about 2 months, which was great. And they were very appreciative, and they didn't even think there was a program that existed around here like that. They could even take those weapons and work with us and work with him at the same time as we're talking to him on the phone, and he was very appreciative of it. So that was a good story. The other 2 stories, one, at the time we didn't have safes in Huntsville, in the Huntsville area up there. So Safer Together is a program that falls under a 501c3 called Bearded Warriors. And Bearded Warriors, those guys, Ty Oswald, that he's the founder of it, and we picked them to be the face of the program because their 501c deals directly with suicide prevention for veterans and first responders. So they were already in that space. And so the VA actually, one of the sergeants there had contacted us. We got a hold of Ty. Ty got a hold of the veteran. And we got a hold of the brother, and the brother came and got the guns. The family, at the end of the day, I don't care if the guns get stored in the safe. Give it to your best friend if you can.
Yeah.
If we can get that message out, you don't have to use the store and the safe in the store. If you got a best friend, and this goes to my next story, with a service member in a National Guard, lives out of state, got in touch with me. We talked, got him talked down, and I asked him, I asked a straight up question now. I don't play around when it comes to suicide stuff. I asked him a question, are you going to kill yourself? I look at dead in the eyes or on the phone, I'm going to ask you the question. I need a yes or no. And based off what you tell me, then I'm going to ask you, do you have firearms available around the house, in your vehicle, anything like that? And if they tell me yes, do you have somebody you trust that you could give your gun to for a little while we go get these X, Y, and Z you told me about, while we go get these taken care of? Do you think that would be beneficial for you? Yeah, it would. I want you to call that best friend. This is what I told this soldier. And the next morning, and I told his platoon sergeant, the next morning I got a text that his friend came and picked up the stuff. At the end of the day, I don't care if you use a safe in the gun store. If you don't, you got a best friend, you got a chap, you got a peer, you got somebody. We know the numbers. We know the statistics. Let's just be real about it.
Yeah.
Let's just be real. So those are the three stories right now that we got. And, as this program grows, the goal here is for us to have at least one FFL in every county, 67 counties in the state of Alabama, at least one store per county. That's the goal we're going for right now.
So how many counties y'all in now?
So right now we're in 4 counties total. We have 4 stores online: Shelby County, Jefferson County, Montgomery, and then we've got down here with Kaufman's that we just did. Which county is that?
That's Dale County.
That's Dale County. So we got Dale County done. We've got 2 in Huntsville coming online in January. We've already ordered the safes for them, the AR bar up in Huntsville, and bullets and barrels.
Okay.
They're each going to have 2 safes. So that onboarding will probably happen sometime in January.
Great.
We're hoping around the American Legion conference time frame we'll be able to do that. Those were actually sponsored by Alabama veterans.
That's awesome.
Chris Montz and his team got together and said, "Hey, man, we want to jump in on this." And that's how we sponsor the safes. A lot of times the organizations get together, local, like we did at Kaufman's. There was a personal donation by somebody that's in the recovery community. I'm not going to throw his name out here right now, but he knows who he is. And then also John Marsh over at the VFW Post 6683 jumped in, and Care Counseling, and they helped us raise money to buy those 2 Liberty safes that are down there in Kaufman's right now. So Alabama veterans bought those, and then Bearded Warriors, we had raised enough money to buy 4 more safes for a store out in Marshall County.
Okay.
So Marshall County Command Tactical is going to have 4 out there.
Yeah, in Gunnersville.
Huh?
In Gunnersville.
Yeah, in Gunnersville. Yeah. Nick is an Army veteran himself, and we went out there and got him trained up just like 2 weeks ago, and so the safe should be arriving this week. So we're going to try to do all 3 of those stores around January timeframe. We have another store down in Dothan down here that's ready to go. We got to find some funding for the safes, and then we've got another store in Prattville, Alabama that's got room for 2 safes, and then we've got 2 more that we're working on. And down in Mobile, we got the fires lit down there, and we got a bunch of folks from the Marine Corps League and the VFW searching for some places down there. I think we may have a couple down there. And in Tuscaloosa, we had a 501c3. Actually, it's Hunter Whitley's 501c3 family. They said they will give 4 safes to the first store that they can get online up in Tuscaloosa area. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of 2 questions to that.
Sure.
How much does one of those safes cost?
Sure.
And how can people help support this mission?
Yeah, so the first thing we did, we were trying to partner with a safe company, which we did. We partnered with Pro Steel out of Utah, and they gave us a pretty good deal. The safes are normally like $799. We get them for $350 a piece. Wow. It's not bad. It's American made. It's shipped from Utah, so the cost of the shipping is kind of a cumbersome with about $500, depending. But $350 is and they're nice 14-gun digital safes. You got to have the digital, and you can go to Academy. I know Track Supply. There's a Rural King, I think. We have Rural Kings now, right? So we're trying to get out to them as well to see if we can't work something. So any company that has safes that want to get involved or help out or be a part of this, we're open to anybody right now for that. And then as far as Kaufman's, they carry Liberty safes. So we just bought the safes from the store directly with the donation money, because why not support the stores that are supporting us, right? And that's
sure.
Another big goal too. We want to make known if we have a store that's in the Safer Together partnership, go shop at that store, man. Online business is killing.
Yeah,
these mom and pop gun stores, man. Go support your local gun shops. You got to remember, like, Second Amendment's there to protect the First Amendment, bottom line, and these gun stores are what protect our Second Amendment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you think about it, and JD said that to me, and I'm using that because he's exactly right. So take care of your local gun shops, right? So they can donate the money to Bearded Warriors. They can go to our website, Alabama SaferTogetherAL.org, and on that website there's a donate page, and they can buy shirts. We got Yeti cups, sweatshirts, or they can just make a donation to the campaign that we're trying to raise money for. Awesome. That's how they can do that. And then what we're looking at doing for like Mobile areas, like the veteran organizations are getting together to help raise the money through their donation process to help out purchase the safes in their area, because we want this to be a community thing. Like, we want the Wiregrass. I want you to know the peer support specialists you have down here. You got Jonathan Riley, that works over at People Engaged in Recovery. You got Alan Hendrickson, who's a police officer here. Like, both of them are on the peer program for Safer Together. Like, I want you to know them. I want you to know the Care Counseling group that's down here. I want you to know the VFW folks if you need something, the American Legion, the AMVET. Like we want it to be a community effort because this isn't a program that's designed to be a burden to taxpayers or for our kids later on down the road. This is once we get these safes outfitted in all the counties, this thing is done because there's a law written. It's a simple process. The safes are in place. You know, a little bit of marketing, but other than that, like I think we can do this on a grassroots effort.
Yeah,
without state and federal funding. So,
man, that's awesome. Well, and let me kind of change gears just a little bit. So you mentioned that you did a lot of the MRT training and resiliency and those things, and ROTC programs also teach resilience training in that program of the correct me if I get it wrong, but it's spiritual, physical, and emotional resiliency. Sure. How has that informed what you do now and how you help care for veterans and those that y'all are working with? Yeah, sure. So anytime you got somebody, I think what I've learned in this whole process, and I taught resiliency at the National Guard, and we would run multiple classes, is especially with the subject of suicide. I know it's a tough subject, but it's never like one thing that leads to it. And it's not something that just happened overnight. It's a progressive state of, like I think about the triangle, right? With the spiritual, the financial, the relationship, the physical health. We got to tie physical health into this. Those are very important. And then you got the spiritual / purpose, meaning of life, or meaning, kind of in the middle. That's the glue that holds everything together. And so when you're talking resiliency, or if I'm talking to someone, I ask the question, how's your finances? How's your relate on a scale of 1 to 5? That's one of the tools that we use. And you start to see, well, if 1 to 5, if I'm a 1 at finances and a 1 at relationships and my physical health's a 1, we got some work to do. Right. Let's attack all of it, because you can't just it's not just one thing. It's a lot of stuff. Right. And I think teaching resiliency, I think a lot of us are already resilient. I just think it's like we haven't done any real goal setting. We haven't set goals for ourselves. We haven't changed our habits. And I talk a lot about habits, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you successful, is your habits. And you can have good habits or you can have bad habits. It takes 21 days to change a new habit. So let's make those new habits and bring those 1s up to like 2s and 3s until we can get them to 4s and 5s later on down the road. And putting in that perspective for somebody, they go, okay, they get it. And a lot of us, and you being a pastor and everything, and I'm just knocking on wood, I don't drop the F-bomb because I'm a Marine. I got a bad mouth. I'm trying not to say anything bad in church. But it's hard for some of us. But, you also have to understand, a lot of us have, I think one thing that we see a lot that doesn't get talked about enough is moral injury. Yeah. And I was training my staff down in Florida Springs on veteran culture, military culture. And we bring up things like traumatic brain injury, and we're talking about, substance use disorder and the finances and all that stuff. And I'm like, how many of you know about moral injury? And a few did. They've learned of it. And you're trying to explain something that it was explained to me like it's something that the heart doesn't want to do, but the brain is telling you you've got to do because it's part of your job, right? And I always give them the recommendation, like a regeneration kill. That's the invasion of Iraq with the Marines and their story, the reporter that was with them, and see if you can find the cases of moral injury in that book. And there's thousands of them. I mean, there's a ton of them, right? There's several I could give on the air now about what's going on the border. There's things that happen down there that are out of our control, but it affects the psyche, it affects the emotional state, it affects the spiritual state of a human being. And so I think that's one that we've got to tackle. And and I'm not in your shoes, but I know spiritually across the world, it's tough, right? Like we've seen a fall off of church, sure, all that stuff, people going to church and stuff like that. And I'm working on it. My wife is going. My son is like doing stuff on the boat. He's doing Bible studies, proud of them, But some of us, it's a hard pill to swallow to get into that, right? Yeah. So I think you gotta find the meaning of life, and you gotta find your purpose, whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be some big, like I've got to run you know what I mean?
my purpose right now is I'm going to teach my grandbaby how to hunt. Right. I'm going to teach her how to do that kind of stuff. That's what I'm looking for. So everything I'm doing, she just got her first shotgun for Christmas. She's 18 months. She got a 410 Stevens turkey shotgun with a choke in it and everything.
I've got a Browning 22 with my name engraved that I had before I even knew I could
there
have
you
a good
go.
one. I don't think I was born yet. My grandfather had it for me.
My wife taught me out of that when I was already eyeballing a few things. So I think, seriously being able to sit down and evaluate your life and being open and honest and vulnerable about where you're at. Now, because not everything's going to be gravy.
Yeah.
We're all not going to be at 5 at any time in our lives. There's never a time for that. You're always going to struggle with something. There's always things are always changing. But I think when I see a guy or a gal commit to treatment, they're making that first step, right? Yeah. They're making that step. So, you know what? I got to change my ways or I'm going to keep going down this path. And I need to look at these items here and then help them get the right support for those items, right?
Well, and you mentioned moral injury, and that's something that I don't think gets talked about enough as a real problem or struggle or hurdle, whatever word you want to use, especially for veterans, but also for first responders. But we had a member of our congregation some years ago. They've moved off now, but he was a Marine, and or is a Marine, I guess. And he told me, he said, I was trained for my whole adult life. Emotions get me killed. Mm-hmm. I have to go in and know exactly what I'm doing, and all the things of war and that kind of stuff. And so talking about those emotional things that kind of help build resiliency and being open and things like that, even in the training of because in the military, I mean, there's hard things you have to do, mm-hmm. and there are decisions that you have to make that become instinct because of the amount of training that's done. Mm-hmm. And I know SEER school is sort of like Fight Club. We don't talk about it. I've heard some rumors and stories of training and things that have gone on in SEER training, just to be trained on the fact that if or when you get captured, this is how to survive. People don't understand that if they've never been through that, right. and I think they have this theory that it's just like a light switch that can be turned on and off. Yeah, and it's not. Yeah. I mean, that becomes who you are. Yeah, and I've seen it. Even one of my best friends, he went in the Navy, and he already had a bad mouth before the Navy. And when he came back from basic, he was talking to me at my house, getting ready for my wedding, and he said, "Man, I'm so sorry. I'm sure my language is bothering you." And I said, "It really don't." I said, "You knew my daddy." He said, "It's just part of our culture. I mean, I don't think I've received an order that didn't have one of those in it." And unless you've lived that, you don't get it. And we idolize a cookie cutter world where everybody can kind of fit in a box. Yeah, and that's just not the case. Yeah. And I think that's part of that healing as well, whether it's the spirituality and the Christian faith or a higher power, like the language you would use in NA or AA, mm-hmm. Of something that's outside yourself. And I think there's something too, I've been watching, I like to watch a little bit of TV, and there's a show I've been watching that has a lot to do with like the CIA and soldiers and these sorts of things. And the soldier came back from being a prisoner of war and just had a really hard time acclimating back into the civilian life and or back into normalcy, period. Mm-hmm. And a friend of his had come to his wife and said, he's a soldier without a purpose. Mm-hmm. And that's where danger sets in. And I think it's true, just in the way I've seen my friends and the way I've seen it in this community, they have to have a purpose. Yeah. And like you said from your story, when you've had the daily grind of this lifestyle and then you step out of it, it's strange.
It's a different planet.
Yeah.
It's a different world. Nobody gets you. My first corporate job, I'd say, it was I was working for the band of Puerto Rican Indians, working at the casino, doing training and development. And I swear to God, I'll share this quick story, but it was my first meeting with the whole HR team, and the director was hosting the meeting at 08, right? So what time is the Marine going to be there? We'll be there probably at 7:30 because I'm going to be scoping the place out, making sure we're all there, right? Everything's good. And I got to remember, I'm not the mass sergeant anymore. I'm not the ops chief. I'm not in charge. I'm not the platoon sergeant or any of that stuff. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm it's 7:45. I'm ready to go. I've got out my notepad. I'm ready to go. I already got my coffee. And about 8:02, people are still coming through the door with the HR director sitting at the table, and people are still talking and getting bagels and getting. And you got to understand, I was still drinking at the time. I was still having chronic pain at the time. I was still not sleeping at the time. So all of this was going on. Which none of that helps with anything, sure. Right? And the cortisol rush in my body was showing because I was getting pissed, like my face was getting a little red. And Alicia Haynes was my boss. God bless her, man. She's like, "Are you okay?" And my heart was pounding, man. I mean, if I had a watch on, like that kept my heart rate, it probably would have been about 160. I was so irritated. Like, how could these disrespectful, thing I'm not going to say in this church, not be at their seat ready to go when you've got the director. Mm-hmm. And so this is going off it's a whole story going on in my head. Nobody else knows what's going on but me. But I feel it's so real because that wouldn't take place where I came from. Yeah. And where any of us came from in that, including the first responder, EMS. People are going to be on time. People will be where they're supposed to be and show respect. And to me, it just drove me nuts. And then Alicia, eventually later on, she's like, "Hey, tell me what happened up there." And I told her. And luckily, her husband was in the Army and had been in like 17 years. He got injured in Iraq. And so we talked about it, and she got it. Like, gosh, she actually understood why. She's like, "Yeah, Johnny does that all the time." I get it. Don't worry. Yeah. Don't worry about it. And she was so forgiving and understanding. And I'm like, oh, my God. Matter of fact, she was one of the first people I told I had a drinking problem. I didn't want to tell HR that I got to get some help. And I remember her going, she just got up. She's like, "My dad was an alcoholic." And she came over and gave me a hug. Like, "You're getting help?" Like, I never would have thought that. Right. Because we just don't know. And that story just kind of like, anytime I'm talking to guys and gals who've just gotten out, I hear that same story over and over. And just little things, that they see in the civilian world. And it is a transition issue, and we don't do a good job. I think the Air Force probably does a better job than anybody. Joking, but Air Force guys will get it. But yeah, Marines and Army, man, it's like, hey, here's a 3-day TAPS course. We're going to tell you about X, Y, and Z, and we're just ready to get out of there, and then we're out. I'll tell everybody, in April of 2015, I was on Fire Island with the Marines, with my platoon, or my company of Marines, on the beach. It was snowing, and we were doing some joint stuff with the Coast Guard. And 3 weeks later, I was down at Camp Lejeune retiring. So I went from having 200 Marines and 5 corpsmen to now I'm in Alabama getting ready to do a retirement ceremony, and everybody's like, "Oh, enjoy retirement. You're going to have your feet kicked up and relaxing." And I did not relax one bit, and the alcohol didn't help me relax. Even though I thought that's what it was doing, it really didn't help at all. Yeah. Worse.
I never saw it in this perspective, but, there were some accounts on TikTok that were showing, no one talks about how hard it is to go from this to that. And it's a video of folks driving down in a Humvee in the desert and, observing buildings left and right and all these things. And then the next scene is, you're hopping in your Kia Soul or whatever, driving around the circle, and it's like, no one talks about how hard that transition is. Yeah. And just in the natural life of things, I think folks don't get it, which I think peer support is so important, is having people that understand. Yeah. Well, to kind of close us out a little bit and take that path, talk about what you do at Florida Springs. Yeah. Talk about what that is. Panama City's almost like a second home. I can't tell you the amount of folks in our church, my family included, that have property down there that are always at Panama City. Right. And I used to do youth ministry. And anytime that it was a holiday weekend or the summertime, I always told everybody, I said, look, you got to understand, if a kid in our church doesn't have a home or a condo or whatever, their best friend does. Yeah. Everybody's down there. Yeah. I mean, it's really close to us in that capacity. Yeah. So tell us a bit about Florida Springs.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the director of veteran programming down there. I was with the National Guard. The resiliency program was getting sunsetted this year. So they're actually cutting the program off. And we got caught up in the DOJ thing. And so I had to find, a new role. And I wanted to stay in the mental health area. And I really enjoyed working with guys and gals struggling with addiction. And so I interviewed with 5 different treatment centers, Florida Springs being one of them. And something hit me down there that was just, it felt like family. Everybody had been down there for 3 to 5 years. It wasn't a high turnover. It seemed like a good culture. It's in a great location, and they wanted somebody to come in and help develop a program for veterans. And so right now we have an access to care program. We don't have a veterans program yet. We're building it out. So we're hiring the people, we're building the programs, we're building the modalities out that are evidence-based, that work specifically for the veteran and military community when it comes to individual therapy, group therapy, family sessions, things of that nature. And so what I did is I helped with the hiring down there. And so we went out and got a veteran therapist to come down that I worked with in the past, who's done some amazing work on a lot of the veterans. Every veteran I've ever sent, they've talked highly of him, and he wanted to come down. And I got a VA care coordinator that followed suit and came with him. And so I've got those two guys down there with me, and we've hired a few other folks who do behavioral health technician stuff. We've got a bunch of staff. Matter of fact, our president, George Cannon, is a Navy corpsman, Vietnam vet.
Wow.
And so when I met with him and I met with Amy Hancock, who's the CEO, and Dr. Palm, who's our medical director, sitting there talking with them. And immediately when I walked in, me and George connected because he was in the Navy, Marines. I mean, we are the department of the Navy, right? The men's department, right? And so we're joking back and forth. And, he was with 1st Battalion, 4th Marines. Their nickname was the Magnificent Bastards.
Yeah.
If you know anything about that unit in Vietnam, one of their CEOs won a Medal of Honor. Crazy story. Anyway, he was a part of that. And so me and him were just chatting back and forth, and it was just one of his lifelong goals. He wanted to establish something for the veteran community. And so that felt like, okay, this is an opportunity to do something completely different where I'm helping build the program and bringing the right people into play in the right aspects of what we need to be focused on. For example, traumatic brain injury.
I've seen some research where they're saying now that anybody that's been on any type of deployment downrange and has seen any combat
get screened.
Has it?
Yeah, get screened. Shooting, high-powered rifles in closed space, outside space, whatever, like that can play a role. It blows my mind in the mental health. Like it's like, be careful what I say here, but we like to give pills for symptoms.
Yeah.
Which it really affects us badly when it comes to that, because that we follow orders, and a lot of us follow orders, and we get 10 pills from the VA or whoever, the primary care provider, and here we are taking all these, plus we're drinking, plus we're not sleeping, plus we're not, you add all this stuff in. It's like we never get down to a root cause, whatever that root cause might be, whether it's trauma and a combination of multiple other things. But like for traumatic brain injury, the one thing that controls everything that we do, the brain, we rarely even look at it. We rarely look at the stuff that goes into our body that affects our brain chemistry, like the foods we eat, or the foods that we should be eating that we don't eat.
Yeah.
The processed foods, the other unhealthy habits that are out there, the smoking and all that stuff, But then the concussions, the CTEs, the traumatic brain injuries, all that stuff. And that was one thing we were very big on. And there's a lot of support in the state of Alabama for traumatic brain injury research. And we're glad that that's finally happening. We were glad that was a part of the Veterans Mental Health Steering Committee process this past year that we set on. And we've been working closely with them as far as when they come into treatment. I want every treatment center doing this. It's exclusive to Florida Springs. Like, screen your people for TBI. And you'll be surprised how many veterans don't even know what a TBI is or have never been screened. I remember getting back from Iraq, and I don't think I was ever asked that question. I didn't know what a TBI was until a few years ago, right? Yeah. So that was one thing. Another thing that's in place down there is very important is fitness. And I talk about fitness. I talk about resistance training, strength training, recovery. We call it active recovery in the resistance training world. So I'm doing personal training down there with them. So when a vet comes in, if they want a program when they leave, I'll give them a program. I'll stick with them when they get out. But we have a nice gym down there, and a lot of the stuff was donated by a 501c3, and we have a beautiful gym. We haven't released the name of it yet, but we're going to show the family here soon what it went to. Awesome. But getting back on the weights, building muscle, skeletal muscle mass, like having these conversations holistically, what can we do to improve our outcomes and reduce our risk? We got to work on our sleep. We got to eat right. We got to stay in shape, right? We got to find meaning and purpose. And start doing those little things. Let's start with those habits first. And so that's built into our program, along with all the other, therapy tools and evidence-based stuff that goes into it. So that's why I said we have access to care. I'm not calling it a program or anything like that. I mean,
Sure.
We only got 14 beds down there for veterans, for male veterans, and but we've got other partners all throughout the Southeast that have good programs. But I'm about getting them where they need to go at that moment. If it's with us, that's great. If it's with somebody else, that's great too. the fact that they're reaching out for help. Because if everybody was reaching out for help that really needed help right now, we wouldn't have enough beds in the state of Alabama or Florida or the VA domiciliaries to support everybody.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great work going out there with community efforts like here in the Wiregrass, with all the prevention stuff that the VA's been pushing. The word is getting out. And I think, too, you're seeing a lot of other guys who have been in, guys like me did the 20 years coming out saying, hey, man, it's go get some help, bro. Life's a lot better on this side, and you can really fulfill what you're trying to do. So that's what we're really working on down there, and but the wheels are on it, moving real fast. I'm glad to be a part of it, and all the other places I went to were great too. I want everybody to be successful. I want them to take care of the veterans, the military, and the first responders. I mean, or anybody that walks in the door, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, we don't have the monopoly on this thing. There's a lot of people struggling right now. Everything, the cost of living's high. A lot going on. We don't know what to believe anymore these days.
That's right.
The social media,
Yeah.
the freaking phones, or you talk about addiction. Everybody wants to look at the guy who drinks or the guy that uses drugs. I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot more addictions out there. Look at your family next time you're sitting at the table, and how many of you are on a cell phone at dinner? What are those kids seeing on that cell phone every day? Drama. And consuming bad food is one thing, but consuming that media, especially bad media, all day long, is not good for you either.
No, and I'll tell you, that's something that when you think about that, there was a guy I had heard at a conference, and he wrote a book. I think it was called Almost Human or Barely Human or something like that. And he went to a monastery somewhere, I think in California, and he gave up his phone, and he was just doing research, and he had literal DTs. From being away from his throne.
Yeah, delirium tremors.
I mean, it was insane to hear his research. And it's something that, when you think about pornography or any type of addiction of that nature, I mean, the dopamine levels and all that kind of stuff mimics the same thing as heroin addiction and others. And when you think about the amount of screen usage, that was something that one thing that people talk a lot about in this decrease of spirituality is because of apathy, and people just don't care. And you think about it. I mean, years ago, you would read about only news that was within your country or within your state or community, and even then, I mean, like Hitler's invasion of Poland was a small little insert in the back of the Times.
Right.
But now you can have access to. I mean, we literally saw the invasion of Kiev.
Yeah.
On Facebook and YouTube and TikTok from citizens who are in a bunker grabbing weapons.
Yeah.
And it's unfolding real time.
Yeah.
And the amount of that information, the brain just has a hard time processing, especially with all the emotions involved in it.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, just so much. With Jason, look, I can't tell you enough how grateful I am that you came and willing to share your story and share about your ministry and your mission, those things. And I really see it as a ministry. That's my world. But, that's anything you can do to help others get in a better spot. I mean, it's so impactful. So Jason, is there anything you want to leave with us before we close? Anything you want to share that you haven't had the chance to?
Yeah. Well, if we're Safer Together, if you want to check us out, safertogetheral.org. Go check us out. Everything and the information about the process, the Houston Hunter Act, everything's on there. If you got somebody that's struggling, the 988 Hit 1 Veterans Hotline, you've got our program. There's other organizations out there. Matter of fact, on our website, we've got community partners listed up there. You can call any of those community partners on any information that you might need. Other than that, man, just thanks for giving us a space and being so supportive of what we're doing and trying to do out here. And just podcast is great, man. I think this is the way we consume a lot of media nowadays. And when it's good informed stuff, I think it really makes an impact. So
Awesome. Well, Jason, I'm going to close this with a word of prayer, and then we'll be out of here.
all right.
Father, I thank you so much for Jason and for the Safer Together program and Bearded Warriors and Florida Springs and all that they do. And Lord, I just pray that you continue to bless them in their efforts to care for our veterans and our active duty military and first responders. And Father, I just pray that you bless them as well with generosity of donors and community members that are able to give their time as peers and able to give of their resources to help purchase more safes and to support the funding of this great program as it's helping lives all across our state and programs like it. And I just pray that you be with Jason and all of his travels and all of his work that he does and be with his family. And I pray that you be with us as we leave today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Friends, thank you so much for joining the No Grow Go podcast. Make sure to look up safertogetheral.org, right?
Yes, sir.
And check out how you can support. And if you know somebody who's struggling or in need or that could benefit from this group and what they do, make sure to share this podcast with them and share it with all those in your circle. Help us get the word out about the great work they're doing. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you soon.